Okay, so our graphic is finally starting to stand alone a little bit. Right now I have all of my original source material hidden, and you can tell what it is, it just really doesn't look that great. So let's turn back on our background layer to see what that stopwatch looks like. And indeed, we're missing the start and stop buttons. They are, in this case, a little bit lower. There might be kind of the same thickness, at least at the top, but they are not quite as high and primary as this central one. So we can't necessarily just copy this thing wholesale. V for black arrow. If I shift select these two objects and then hit Command G for group, now I can address them as a unit. Oops. So if I drag them away, they're gonna come away together. Now, to represent these little guys over here, I think I want to make a copy of this group. So let's go up to Edit, Copy, and then Edit, Paste in Place. This one is huge, and if you like those hotkeys, it's Shift-Command-V. So Paste in Place, if you were watching over here in the layers, we got another group that's identical to the other one, or the first one rather. So I can just hide one of those groups, and we'll come back to it later. And now I can mess around with this thing and do whatever I want, and then after I get rid of it, I can replace the original by restoring it with the eyeball, exactly where it was. So if I want to work with this while keeping it a group, I double-click it, and up here on the left you see it says Layer, and the next thing over is Group. So right now I can't accidentally change anything else on the screen. I can only work with the elements that are part of this group. One thing I might do is change its color, right? So we can go and pick black. And then if I wanted to, I can get in there and maybe try to illustrate that thing a little more specifically. So let's say, well, let me think about this for a second. I'm going to try coming down a little bit, making this thing a little skinnier. You see that it gets flat pretty quick. I might make this guy a little skinnier too. And now we have that problem again where my grid seems to be just a little too thick. So let's go back to Preferences and Guides and Grid. So maybe as it turns out, this just needs to be 16 instead of 8 because I keep running up against this limitation. So here I could do something, for example, like Command apostrophe to show my workspace. And then I might say V for black arrow. And we can make sort of that little cap. I can go back to my rectangle tool and then make this little thing. And then let's make a third one, although this one we will change the color back to somewhere in the gray territory. Now don't fret that it's not exactly the same gray. We can fix all that stuff in a minute. I think I'm going to go with this. I'm just going to let this thing be sort of in alignment with this stem, and we'll see if I regret that decision later. So the cool thing now is if up at the left-hand corner I back out of the group, now everything is still considered as part of the group, and it's easier to work with. Okay, so now we want to take this thing and we want to rotate it in this really precise fashion so that it winds up tilted over here to the side. But we want it to keep its general orientation relative to the edge of the clock face. So to do that, I will head over here to the Rotate tool, which is also just R on the keyboard. And when I click it, you'll see by default you get this little cyan target that tells me what the center of rotation is. So if I try to rotate this thing right now, which I can do by holding Command, you can see that it rotates like this, and that is not what we want. Rather, we want to take our mouse and click all the way down here, and then now the center of rotation for that group is actually the center of the clock face. And now what I can do is just grab this thing with the arrow and just pull it over, and see it's going to lay over super nice like that. Now it could be, I don't know, maybe it looks a little bit more interesting if we keep it closer to the center. It's totally up to you at this point. Sometimes things look more real if you make changes on the fly that don't necessarily agree with the actual photograph. So let's say we put that guy right there. Now you'll notice I've lost this graphic, but it's fine because we can get it back by just showing it right there. If I want, I can also take this fellow while the center of rotation is still correctly laid, and I can hold down the Alt key. You know what, I may have to restart this command again. So center of rotation, Right, so after I click center of rotation, I just had to refresh it. Now I get my little black arrow, and I'll hold down the Alt key, or Option if you're on the Mac, and you see how that makes my cursor into a little double. Now I can pull this guy over. Oops. Let's try that again. So center of rotation. Hold down the Alt key. Drag this thing along. I don't know why it's not working. Weird. Maybe, let me try some other stuff here. So there's the group. That's selectable. That looks good. I can move it around, but I'll hit undo because I don't want to do that. And then I'll hit the rotate command. I'll click down here. I'll hold down Alt, and I'll pull this guy over. And then what I'm trying to do is to get it to mirror exactly right. Oh, and that reminds me, maybe we should just take a look at the mirror command. So that would be one way of getting that done. I'll hit undo. Another way of getting that done would be to select the reflect tool, which is conveniently right under the rotate tool. Again, we are going to set the center of rotation and move this guy around. And I forgot to hold Alt. So confusing, right? So one of the things I'm trying to do here, as funny as this might seem, you'll think, well, I'm taking this class. Doesn't this guy know what he's doing? And I think part of the idea I want to impart is that you never know what you're doing. And so I have a lot of practice. You guys will gain more practice as you go, but it's really important to show how you work through problems, and those problems are going to persist throughout your career. So if we have a method that's working, we'll stick to it. I think in this particular case, reflect and rotate are going to work kind of the same way. So with that in mind, I'll use the black arrow to select this guy. The rotate tool is active. I'm going to reset the center of rotation, hold down Alt, and then bring this guy over to the other side. And I believe it's supposed to go right about there. Is it here? It's there. Okay, so now I can zoom out. I can hide my background image, hide my grid, click the black arrow and click the background, and we'll see that we're getting there. My colors are slightly off, so another thing I could do is shift select these two, Control Command GGG to make sure that they're ungrouped, shift select them both, I for eyedropper, and then click right there, and that's going to cause them to adopt the exact same color. But there may be something interesting about making them slightly different colors so that they sort of push into the background. So more on that in the next video.